Hey, Ag Teacher Thoughts here, coming at you with another video. Today we're going to do some early, not quite spring, still winter, but it feels like spring pruning to our maple tree. So this is a crimson maple, and I need to get some of the branches back on my side of the property line. So we're going to do some work to do that today. Now it's a balmy 54 degrees Fahrenheit here in North Idaho. However, if you look up at the hillside or the top of the canyon over across me, there's still snow up there. 2 weeks ago, I think we were 2 degrees, and now we are 54. So things get kind of crazy here in North Idaho, and we're going to take advantage of the day that we have now. So there's a little bit of a breeze. Sorry about that if you get some wind noise, but we're going to work with what we have. The sun is partially out, but by evening we're supposed to have inches of rain come through, and that's going to be a challenge because we are actually an area where I'm at only gets 11 inches of rain a year, so getting an inch or two today is going to be a lot. So we're going to get this done, get as much of it as we can, and I'm just going to kind of let the camera roll. I'll talk to you a little bit about what I'm doing, maybe run you up and down the ladder so you can see a few things. I'm more of an herbaceous plant guy, so arboriculture is not quite my thing, but I did learn a thing or two from my father, so hopefully I do him well by showing kind of what I've learned. And he, on the other hand, is really knowledgeable in this. He spent time with, I think his name is Dr. Shigo, I believe is the name, which is a gentleman that did a lot of research on trees and tree pruning and brought a lot of the knowledge to us that we have now about how to take care of and trim trees. So in a roundabout way, that's kind of what we've got. So let's get you set up here. We'll take a look at what's going on, and then we'll start doing some pruning. All right, I don't think you're quite on level ground. Let's get you up a little bit higher here. All right. So I couldn't find my little saw that I normally use. I have a little hand pruning saw. So for our small hand saw, we're going to use a bow saw. Not my favorite, but it's still technically winter, and this is what I could find in the yard shed. So we're going to use this as part of it. We're going to use a pair of bypass loppers. That's really kind of important to use a bypass lopper when you're doing tree work. That way we're not crushing the branches, we're actually shearing them off. And when we say bypass, we mean that this blade goes past the surface of that anvil right there. So it goes all the way past and shears that off. It's better than the loppers that actually have a flat anvil that the blade comes down on, and it actually crushes the tissue and causes tissue damage. We want as much of it to stay alive after we cut it as we can, so that we don't have other issues with the plant struggling to heal. And of course, the ubiquitous pole saw to help me not have to be so high up in the tree. We're going to be using that. It's got a great blade on it. Another little handsaw that had this style of blade on it, I just don't know where it went. But it's got a pruning hook up top. It's got the blade here. It's got a lopper, bypass lopper right here. This was a Costco special. If you want one, they're at Costco right now. I just saw them. I think they're like 65 bucks. But hey, without further ado, let's get in here. Let's take a look at some of the branches that we're going to remove. And we're going to just do some general cleanup and kind of open this tree up on that side. And get some of the overhanging branches off. Not going to go too crazy because I want my tree to heal, and I know that it's had some issues previously. I do think it's a possibility it's been previously struck by lightning, but it's healed. Didn't completely destroy it, so it wasn't like a super strike. But we do have lightning that does come through here in the springtime, and I've watched it hit several buildings and trees around here. So there's a possibility that's what part of the damage is. So our goal is going to be to thin up some of this plant material up here, prune off some of the branches and kind of bring that back. We're not going to go too crazy on that because, again, this is an older, more established tree, and if we cut too much out of here, it's really going to struggle to recover, and we don't want any massive dieback going down, which will then eventually, travel back down into the roots. So this is kind of what we're going to work on. We're going to select a few branches here, try to work a little bit on shape, work on things that are crossing over, and kind of remove that. All right. Well, let's get into it, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what and why. So, yeah, let's see what we can do. All right, so I paused just a moment to check with the neighbor, chat with him a little bit. Got a couple of branches down while I did that. Kind of the ones I was selecting. You can see up there where the pole saw is dangling off. I have a branch up there I cut off, and then there's a branch a little bit further back in. I think it's right about there. Having to look out and point at the same time. But that one was a crossing branch, so we took that. I know there's a little bit of a tongue hanging off the end. I'm going to go up and hand prune those, kind of bring that back. So that area there, just a little bit more handwork. I'm going to set the ladder up and go do that. And then we'll come up to this bunch up here, and I'll talk a little bit through that work. Hopefully it's not too windy for you, but I'll get the ladder set up. We'll grab the bow saw, get up there, and start working on that. All right, so that kind of wore me out a little bit. Let's go ahead and look at this tree, see how we're doing in here. Man, I don't know if you can see it, but those are some tight growth rings there. I don't know, that chunk might be, that's well over 20 years old, but those are really, really tight growth rings. So again, this is a crimson maple. One of the reasons why I decided to leave a little bit of a stub up there, so there's a little bit of a stub up there, is I'm going to give it a place for it to sprout out and come back to, because I do want a little bit of a canopy to come out there. I just don't want it to go so far over. So I left what's called latent buds on there. So I left a little bit of a stub. I know there's a little branch on the other side I'd like to have it take over. And then on these, let's bring this down here. On branches where you kind of see, this one's kind of been boogered up. There's one right there. So this is called a latent bud. So this bud, this could be 20 or 30 years old, and it's actually hidden down in the lower levels of the tree itself. And that bud doesn't grow into a full branch unless it gets a change of hormones in the tree to tell it to go ahead and take off and start forming a branch. So these latent buds, they grow in here, and they just keep up just barely with the outside surface of the branch. Sometimes they form a little bit of a bump. This is one that was a latent bud, but it got knocked off, so I don't think that one's active anymore. And this one had one, but it got knocked off there when I bumped it or knocked it down. But anyway, these latent buds, they stay there, and then when you cut off a branch, the meristematic tissue that's way up near the end, so way up here where the tip of the leaves are, when that's no longer producing a hormone, that ends up translating down here to the other buds, and they're like, oh my gosh, the tip of our branch has been cut off. We need to supply energy, so they'll actually start sprouting like this one did here, and they'll start growing into a new branch. So I did leave some of those up there. I didn't prune it all the way back because I do want that to take over and start going. Now, I don't know how much of the sawing I'm going to leave there, but that bow saw is miserable. I just don't know where my little hand saw is, and I don't feel like taking an hour out of my day to go run up to Home Depot and grab a new one. Although it'd probably put me time ahead. So I'm going to keep going in. I've got another branch there that I kind of selected that I got to go in and clean up. And I got a little dangling up there. We'll get that one down. But the goal is to try to get all of this done before the buds themselves start to open. So what we can do is we can look at the little bitty buds right there. They are still closed. So our goal right now is to get as close as we can to spring with the buds closed and get everything trimmed before the sap really starts running in the tree and the buds open. That way, whatever damage we cause can actually be healed over by the tree relatively quickly, and it doesn't have to have a long time where it's exposed for bacteria or fungus to get in. So that's what we're going to work on there. Now again, I know this tree has a limited life. It was planted most likely in about 76 or 77. So it's about 50 years old. I think most maple trees, about 100, 125 years old. That's going to be it. But this one does have, again, that damage that I mentioned earlier that's up in the center of it. It does still seem to be solid, but there is some parts of this tree that aren't as healthy as we'd like. But it's an older tree. All right, so let's get up there. We'll go ahead and trim that back again. You can watch me struggle with that bow saw, and then we'll move into this branch out here. Hey, let's get you a little bit closer so you can see what I'm seeing. Okay. So, right there's a branch that kind of does a little curlicue. That is not as strong of a structure as I'd like to see, so that's probably going to come out. So we're going to go up there. It's either a latent bud. Yeah, I think that's a latent bud that activated. So there's a little dead branch right there, and it died out, and then it activated a bud on the side, which came up and then went that way. So we're going to take that one out. So we're going to get as close as we can on that one. And then probably take this one out here right along there and get that one down there. And then we'll see where we're at from there. So we're going to take this one, give it a lot of space in case it chips out. Okay, so that was the lower one. We've got that one. Now we're going to go up to the one up in here that has the curlicue in it. We're going to get that one too. Oops. All right, let's look a little bit closer. Get the camera to focus. So there's the buds. This is where we're at this time of year. So those buds are still tightly closed, so they haven't started to open. But kind of like I mentioned, it was 2 degrees 2 weeks ago, but today it's 54. It's probably 56 by now. So spring is going to come really quick, and this tree is probably definitely running sap. And how do I know it runs sap? Let's come over here and I'll show you a little insight. Let's see, where is it? Oh, there it is. How do I know this runs sap? Because a couple years ago, 2 years ago, or maybe a little more, I tapped it. I was able to make enough maple syrup to taste, but not enough to do anything else. So yeah, the sap hasn't run. Sap's probably running now, but the buds haven't started to push open yet. So we're still good for pruning. Let's get you set back up here and look a little bit more. So we're going to go in here. We're going to remove those stubs. We're going to come back and try to make sure we're standing on the outside of the branch bark collar. Okay, so it's important for us to be on the outside of that. I think that's right about there is what I can see. So if we stay to the correct side of it, it'll heal more rapidly than if we're on the wrong side. All right. I nicked it just a little tiny bit. All right. So here's what we cut off. There's just a little tiny bit of the bark branch collar right there. Come on, focus. All right, we'll just get it lower. There's a little bit of the bark branch collar there. That's a zone of cells that when the tree gets injured and it gets the hormonal signal that it's been injured, this will start growing and cover over the exposed wood. We were right through here, but just a little close right there. And I can show you a little bit about what a bark branch collar is. So this is our branch right here, right? And so we've got a consistent diameter that comes down, and then right in here it begins to flare out. You can see where we've got this layer right here where the bark is kind of pushed up, and it's almost swollen. There you go, you can see right there. Okay, that is the bark branch collar. Okay, so this area right here. So if I were to cut this log or this branch off here, it's going to take a long time for that tissue to grow up over the end, versus if I come down here and I cut it close to the bark branch collar but not into it, then this tissue actually can expand and grow real quickly to cover the end of that. And it does it fairly rapidly. This big of a diameter, probably not one season, but it'll get a significant portion of that covered. So what we're trying to stay outside of is this part right here. So where that branch goes from a consistent diameter to all of a sudden it swells up, that's what we're trying to stay outside of. So I'm making cuts out here, and I just barely nick the top of it on that other one. So not great, because that one section will take longer to heal, but we are in the right spot. All right, so how'd we do with this one? Well, looks like we stayed on the outside of the bark branch collar, which is good. So that one's going to heal well. And again, that is a lot of rings. That is a lot of rings. That's a pretty old tree. Maybe I'll sand it a little bit and see if I can get a count on that. But definitely some older growth there. All right. Let's go look and see if there's anything else we want to take back. So there's the two cuts right there that we did. I'll bring this back in there so we're not overhanging the property line as much. Trying to think of which other. Well, that one right there. Where is it? Where is it for you? That one right there is dead. We're going to take that one out. So we'll get that one. We'll look for anything else that's dead. Remove that. I think that right up there is dead. We'll get that too. And I think we'll be just about done for what I want to do right now. I think I might prune back in here a little bit more, so we'll just bring that branch a little bit further back, and we'll bring this one a little bit further back, but we're not going to remove major branches there. So we'll just do a little trimming on the rest of these. All right, so there we go. We've thinned up the tree a little bit, and I don't want to do this all at once. So I want to give my tree a chance to recover and start growing some new branches. Because if we were to go and cut it all the way back and just have singular branches coming out, they don't get as deeply rooted into the bark. They're a little bit more fragile. They can break off in heavy snow or ice or heavy winds. So we want to kind of do this gradually, bring this canopy back over across the property line. So we do have a fair number of branches that we've cut off, and I'm going to get this all cut up and hauled to the back. You know, nothing super big in diameter. I think about 2.5 inches is about maybe 2 3/4 on some of these. Yeah, about 2.5. I think that's about as all the larger diameter that we've taken off. Pretty happy with how they came. We didn't have anything split way back. We've got everything cut back to bark branch collars, pruned off some of the dead stuff, and I think we're still good. You know, the buds haven't broken open, so we're ahead of the game there. Come on, focus. Anyway, you're gonna just have to trust me on that. So the buds aren't open. They'll start opening here probably in another 2 or 3 weeks. So I think we're good. And I know this is not a full tutorial on how to trim your trees. This is just, hey, you're following along with me. I'm trimming some trees. I thought you might want to enjoy that. Not quite to the professional homeowner status, but definitely a horticulture teacher having fun around his yard, getting things back into shape. This property, when we bought it, it had a lot of issues. We had trees that needed to be removed, right plants, wrong location. We had blackberries, Himalayan blackberries were covering a whole back fence. We had a alleyway we had to recover, but there's been a lot of work. So this has all just been a part of that. And this is something I've needed to get to for a couple years and finally caught it at the right time of year to do it. So anyway, I hope you learned something. We can go over some pruning at a later date, give you a little bit more tips and pointers on that. I know Mrs. Ag Teacher Thoughts is back there working on the roses, so maybe we'll end this video here and go back and take a look at that. Anyway, hope you learned something. Ag Teacher Thoughts out.